Welcome, everybody, to our energy meditation. And because today is Friday, our energy tips recording for this next week, week 24, which is the 4th till 11th of June 21. Mostly designed for energetically sensitives and people who are perceiving things outside of just sort of this sensual world, this thinking world, and this physical world. So we're coming together here as a group of random, like-minded people who would like to pierce through some of these veils of reality. And my job is not to tell you what that is. My job is to help you tune into your own inner sensations, form a good roadmap for navigating life by simply reporting about some of the energetic weather conditions. So we talk about what we perceive, we help another by not feeling singled out or alone, and then we go into this place together to experience it for ourselves, from within ourselves, the inner experience of our higher self, as I call it. Yes, and we are looking at a week right now that is going to be a bit challenging. I'm rolling my eyes because I feel like a broken record. So when I talk to energetically sensitives, really, I have to say that these times right now are always challenging for us because so much is going on. And I think the hardest part is that we still feel singled out. We still feel like we can't really talk to other people about it, because if we look into the news or whatever, it's like the world just seems to kind of hold it all together. And in my forecast for June, I talked about it as a virtual reality. So there is this notion that nobody really knows the answers right now, and yet people are still trying to hold on to the old, or how it used to be, while simultaneously feeling that things are changing, things are shifting. And the challenging aspect about that is that as energetically sensitive, you have these inner impulses that are kind of informing you about certain things. Maybe they're informing you about changing your job, or moving into a different place, or changing or ending your relationship, maybe starting something new. And yet on the other hand, you also feel this need for security, this need for grounding yourself and being fully present. And these things can be reconciled, but not if we are looking on the outside for answers. We can only reconcile this within ourselves, with our true self, as I call it, sort of this mediator between our higher purpose, our soul task, if you will, and this 3D ego self that we are experiencing. And all of you present here, I'm sure, know what I'm talking about. How hard it can be sometimes to reconcile this, to bring this into balance. And my job as energy coach, as energy healer, is to help you navigate this inner reconciliation, this inner balancing and harmonizing process, not by giving you answers, and definitely not by giving you pictures of the future or something that influence your decisions, but by helping you to confirm what it is that you're feeling from within. So when I do these predictions, when I do these forecasts, I'm not actually tapping into some kind of clairvoyance. I'm tapping into something that is already there. So from my perspective, I'm just reading out what is already there. But because it always takes a lot of time, there's a delay until this manifests in the 3D. We might just pick up on it in a sort of subtle or diffuse way. And I see myself here as the translator in this process. So what do I mean when I talk about next week being challenging? First of all, if I've indicated this in the forecast already, if you haven't watched this video, go to my YouTube channel, transCODES at YouTube. I talked about this being sort of a pivotal time here, and this is, of course, the overall development that we all find ourselves in as sort of a humanity, as a collective here that is dealing with a lot of different challenges at the same time. And I'm not just referring to COVID or to some of the economical or ecological or whatever the challenges on the outside might be called. I'm also referring to the inner challenges. We feel that something big is shifting, and when we don't know what that is, it triggers something in us. Core fears. A core fear is something that is programmed into us as sort of fail-safe, as a to-go place when things are really uncertain. And the problem with that is that in that state, it becomes very, very difficult for us to make decisions, to make proper choices, because our system is basically running on emergency mode. It's running in a mode that does not really allow us to harmonize all these different aspects, especially the deeper aspects of life. Core fears trigger our nervous system to go into like a really, really primal mode. And in that mode, we are often losing contact. We're losing the connection with our true self, with that which, really makes us us, with our individuality, with our true being. All right. And this is why, this regular routine, going into meditation, where we practice this here on a daily level, not just practice for learning, but also cultivate it so that we can find our way back when things on the outside get challenging, so that we know how to reset, how to come into a neutral space with the outside, so that we don't permanently run on emergency mode, that we just, become able to contextualize what is going on without identifying with it. And the challenge here in this next week is that it will feel like a very diffuse, very confusing, almost like contradicting reality. Okay, so we will feel this more and more, how media, how our politicians, our leaders, our governments, and our economy becomes more and more confusing, erratic almost. And this will trigger this fear in us that there's uncertainty, and we won't be able to shake this off. What does this do to us? For most of us, it keeps us in a place of stuckness. All right, we will go into this place like, okay, nothing feels safe. In the forecast, I called this, the only choices I seem to have is between a rock and a hard place, right? Screwed either way. In that way, nothing feels real. Everything creates kind of an inner confliction in me, and I don't know what to do. And out of that, running in that emergency mode, we will feel that the safest thing to do is to not do anything. And this is the part that is challenging, because most of us have been in that place for quite a while already. Most of us have been sort of fear triggered, fear conditioned here over at least the last year and a half, to a degree where we haven't really been able to make decisions that are moving us forward. We're just in in that place where we're trying to maintain what we have. And that is very challenging for us because, as you can imagine, in that place, growth is not possible. On the other hand, there'll be, pieces that come in from the outside where people create this brave new world, this better future, and create all these idealizations of rainbows and waterfalls, okay, where everything is better, sort of this paradise thinking, which is almost like fantastical. And that will create another kind of fear in us, namely that we are missing out on something, that there's something going on that we are not part of, but everybody else. So we will feel this very, very strong confusion here, especially in a mental way, in this next coming week. So it will gradually build. If you look at the monthly event calendar that I have here at transCODES, you will find that I've added sort of an energetic well-being barometer to it. Every day has a different color coding, for you to get a little bit of a heads up. And you'll see that, the weekend here can be really challenging energetically without giving it a content, okay? So I don't know what your challenges are going to be, but I know that the problem that you're perceiving will be this confusion, the stuckness. And on the other side, on the other hand, you'll see this idealization, this notion that everything is going to get better and nothing seems to make sense for you. And my tip for you, the biggest tip that I can give you for this next week, is to find this portal inside of you, this part in you that can pierce through this, that can break through this by connecting yourself with yourself again, with your own purpose, the one that can pull you through your life, that can carry you through times like this without you having to give up who you are or, making unhealthy decisions. So if you feel this mental stuckness here coming on for this next week, especially around the new moon, it's also a lunar eclipse right there. The mental confusion will shift into an emotional confusion, okay, where you will feel maybe sad for no reason, or where you feel like sort of a desperation feeling coming over you. Understand that that's not just yours, okay? This uncertainty feeling is really something that puts you into this emergency mode of not wanting to feel all together. And that's what you need to pierce through. So there's this twofold way that we want to approach it. One is to find a proper pathway past this cognitive dissonance where your mind gets sort of stuck in its own loop, in the ruminating, where you get stuck in your own head. Find a way through that. And we practice this here as mindfulness, as regular meditation, regularly touching down with your own body, with your own emotions, with your thoughts as well, but also with the spiritual and energetic part of you, with the whole part of you. And the other part is dealing with your emotions and recognizing that, when we navigate through life based on not wanting to feel something, that ultimately cuts down the whole range of life and living, okay? So I can't just cut out certain ranges. Have you ever listened to a piece of music where you cut out a certain octave? It doesn't sound right anymore. You lose the harmony. And the more you lose the inner harmony, the more you start questioning yourself, the more you start arriving in your head again. So basically what I'm saying is practice and cultivate bypassing your mind through really, integrating, at least 5 minutes, 20 minutes. Research has shown that 20 minutes a day spent in meditation and conscious breathing significantly increases your well-being, your immune system function, your digestion, everything that comes with it, and also shrinks your amygdala, that limbic part of your brain that is responsible for the emergency mode. So there is not just a subjective perception of inner peace when you meditate, but also something that happens on a physiological level that actually helps you, continually to do this more often. So basically the same with physical exercise. The more you practice meditation, the easier it becomes, the faster you get to that place. And on the other hand, working with the feelings that are coming forward. You can't just use meditation to make things go away. This is a big misconception. New Age and this modern spirituality, that you could use mindfulness or mindfulness techniques to make feelings go away. You can't. Feelings are energies and they got to go somewhere. And you don't have to re-traumatize yourself by, sort of playing all these negative feeling tapes that you've stored inside of yourself. And at the same time, you don't need to play these like idealized, fantasized, hyper positive tapes either. Neither of these are going to get you to feeling your truth. You're going to have to recognize that they're all part of the orchestra. They're all part of the song. But you want to be in charge of your tune, and you can only hear your tune if you have enough abilities to discern which is yours and which isn't, and if you're not afraid of feeling and hearing what your true self has to say. So these two techniques taken together is something that I call learning how to be in your heart mind. It's a form of higher thinking and higher learning. I've put a workshop on my YouTube channel where you can actually watch me describe this in detail. Like how these mechanisms are all the way down to our nervous system. The point is that we need to learn that we are beings that live in a world that we are perceiving physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and energetically. And we feel the most peace, the most harmony with ourselves and our environment when we can reconcile them, when we can bring them into harmony. So this is basically it's a life's wisdom, but especially the tip for this next week, where you will feel challenged at first mentally, where you have to get out of your mind and then start feeling something, where you have to learn to allow your feelings to be there and really work with them without getting overwhelmed by them. So this concludes the energy tips here for this next week. So before we then go into the inner experience of that through the meditation, which for today I've picked step 13 of our sacred self-healing experience, that is helping us to tune into nature, into Gaia, and into the mystical part of life, but without sending us into a fantasy world. It helps us to get out of our mind and tune into our feeling. It's a very beautiful process. But before we go there, I'd like to hear from you guys how all this is translating in your life right now, how you are perceiving these energies that are coming in from the outside. Who of you resonates with the feeling of stuckness? Somehow feeling suspended in limbo somehow, maybe even frustrated. Who of you feels this stuckness as an energy? Can you already feel it? Remember how I said we're reading out something that is already there. So when I talk about this is coming, I'm not saying that this is future. This is actually already there for anybody who's energetically sensitive. This is already reality, but you might not be aware of it. Yes, frustration and sudden sadness. Yes. This is this emotional confusion. So the mechanism is first we get stuck in our head, and then we get overwhelmed by this frustration and sudden sadness. And yes, also the confusion. Yeah, I'm feeling this too, guys. I'm also feeling it very difficult right now, finding the right words. Finding the right way to communicate things. This is part of where I feel stuck, or where I feel a bit frustrated, because there's so much of me that wants to come out, but I somehow don't find the right form yet. Anybody feeling this too? It's frustrating sometimes. And then I have to remind myself, okay, just let it integrate. Don't get impatient with yourself. Yes, I like what you're sharing here in the chat. Yes, I want to speak, but it feels only clear to me. Yes, words are a problem. Totally right now for me as well. I have a really hard time writing things right now. And when I do energy sessions, everything takes longer right now, because it takes longer to pierce through that and to get to the point. Sometimes it's better to stay silent, that's right. But this harmonizing, this reconciling within is important, that we do this in a conscious way. We can't just go in a place of shutting ourselves down, okay? You know, when I work with children, I often say to them, if you don't know how to call this, if you don't know how to word this, draw me a picture, or try to make me feel what it is that you are feeling. You'd be surprised what happens when you talk with people and they don't seem to be able to understand you, obviously, depending on what kind of relationship you were in with them. And you ask them, can you help me feel this? Can you help me to better feel what it is that you're trying to express? Can make a huge difference in a relationship, especially when there's controversies or conflicts.
Yeah, Jona, talking about that is part of where the frustration is. Not only trying to communicate for myself, but then listening or being receptive to someone else's communication. And I've noticed this frustration in other people in terms of they'll say something and I'll try to get a clarification, and then they say, oh, just never mind. And then they stop talking. Yeah. And so I've really noticed that a lot here lately with other people. And so for me, sometimes I'm trying to recognize, do I want to continue the conversation without getting pulled into something else with it? Or, you know, it's just navigating all that right now is added to that level of frustration, I think. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense, because, you know, when we feel that way, chances are that other people might feel the same way. Not that we are always going through the same things at the same time, but we definitely all have different ways of processing things, so it may play out differently for others. Sometimes what really helps is to just say it out loud. Say, oh my God, I have this like blockage right now where I don't feel like I'm being heard, or I can hear you. Okay, and sometimes that can already help to relieve things, you know, out of this relationship, because some people are a bit hyper vigilant about feedback, or you know, when you ask again, they may feel like being put on a spot, and their emergency mode is to immediately to shut down. This may not have anything to do with you, you know, that they don't want to share it with you, but they get so frustrated within themselves and never really learned a way how to get past that they give up right there. So oftentimes it's cool if you, when you notice this in another person, that they've given up on themselves, to give them a different kind of sandbox, a different kind of level on which they can express things. Yeah, it really depends on the conversation or the type of conversation. Obviously, when we have that kind of conversation at work, you can't say, oh, show me a picture, you know, but you could, for example, ask, can you give me an example? Yeah, can you illustrate this to me? Yeah, when we run into these issues where we literally feel sort of communicationally inhibited, ask people to clarify in different ways. Yeah, because some people find this almost like critical when you say you can't understand them, and then another sort of thing starts, okay? Then they might feel disregarded or minimized or inferior in this moment. So it's important to feel into this, yeah? And then you can also address that, and you can say, well, I didn't mean it in this way that you are not good enough in expressing it. What I meant was that I'm having a real hard time right now following your train. So can you just give me, you know, an example, or what does that sound like, or what does that feel like, so I can tune in. What I mean to say with this, especially to you audience, since you guys are all energetically sensitive and most of you are also empathic, is to use that ability of yours. Use it to clarify things. Don't try to hide this. Use it, you know, and ask for another person to help you feel it, okay? Because these communicational issues that we are experiencing right now, they have to do with this cognitive dissonance that is stuck in all of us right now. Yeah, nobody has any answers. This is the reality, okay? So we are not doomed. We are just in a really intense transformation right now. And that means that everybody has to roll up their sleeves and be fully present and deal with what is. It doesn't mean that we all have to go into this minimalist place or in this binary good or bad or right or wrong place. No, it just means like, okay, things are changing. I guess that means I have to be more present. And if my mind is too loopy, you know, if I get stuck in the same sort of dissonance over and over again, all I need is to switch the level. Use your empathy, guys. Use your energetic sensitivity to clarify things. But don't expect others to be mind readers either. That is the dark side, the shadow side of being energetically sensitive and empathic, is that you assume that everybody else is too. And that is not the case. So sometimes you're just going to have to spell it out and say, can you find a way to make me feel this? Yeah. Again, here, depending on what kind of situation this conversation is taking place. When it's at work, obviously we have to find a more formal way of expressing that. But when it's in our relationship with our loved ones, it's best to go into this feeling place. Do not be afraid of going into this feeling place. Don't be afraid to use your sensitivity there, because it's also a strength. You'd be surprised to find out how much it can help other people to actually get permission from someone to express something in a feeling way. And when I say feeling way, I don't mean emotionality. Yeah? I don't mean emotionally intense. When I mean feeling way, I mean authentically how this feels to you. So many of us, especially those of us who are a little older, who've been around here for a while and who've got burned, you know, by being a feeling person and finding themselves in a relatively cold world, you will notice that that is something you need to overcome, because in the future, that's a huge skill. There's nothing that is needed more right now than that warmth that you can generate through actually feeling other people and hopefully also expressing your feeling. Because those who have never learned to go there, who've never learned to cultivate this, for them it's starting to get really, really cold and lonely. Yeah. So this is, for me, as somebody who's observing these collective energies for decades now, this is what gives me a lot of hope for us, because I'm now recognizing what the purpose is of all these people, these 25% of us that are awakening to their energetic sensitivity, is just that we become able to pierce through the stuckness in our mind and the stuckness in our emotions, and obviously also the stuckness in our physical, which can be extremely limiting, as we have been experiencing here in these last year and a half through the pandemic, where if we just make things based on our physical survival, then everything else, kind of starves. Okay, so we are all starving for warmth, starving for feelings. And it is us, who have learned to cultivate that, who are the pioneers, who are the ones that can model that for others. So remember that, guys. It's no longer something that you have to hide. It is something that other people will want to learn from you. Also to see yourself in, purpose and meaning, to give some of your journey a meaning. Yeah. So many of you who have had a really hard time in the past, kind of having to hide these parts of you, if you can now make that shift and realize that this is what most people need. You need it too, okay? That's why you probably feel more attracted or resonate more with people like you, like-minded people. That's why community work right now is a really good idea, because it gives you a sense of belonging, and it also normalizes the way you see and experience the world. But the dark side of that is that we can also get lost or stuck in an echo chamber, in a group or place where things are just sort of on repeat, where everything is just, where the message or the bias or the agenda is just being, repeated over and over again, where there's not enough space for you to actually bring yourself into it, or where it feels cold. So that's our job right now, to navigate this, guys. And next week here, especially starting this weekend, because you'll get all these mental confusions in, where you'll doubt everything, you'll turn every stone, and you'll question everything. That is when you need to apply your energetic sensitivity. That's when you need to work it, and when you need to know how to really feel your feelings, and in conjunction with others, express them without projecting them or emotionalizing them. Okay, so let's go into the inner experience of this. Yeah, finding the true nature of our eternal being. And again, really, really deep. That's how you get out of your head and into your heart. Remember this when you get stuck. Yeah. take a time out, cultivate this place in you. It's your heart mind. Yeah. You're not losing yourself, and you don't need to negate your 3D reality either. You just allow it to be there. Thank you, everybody. I see you again after this weekend. If you want to go deeper, check out our event calendar. See you guys soon. Talk to you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.